Let's say that you're a beginner motorcyclist looking to get on two wheels for the first time this season, and you're looking for a motorcycle. You're probably looking for a bike that looks cool, sounds good, performs well, and is affordable. Now, if only there was a motorcycle out there that ticked all of those boxes. Kind of like that one. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, and today we have the CFMOTO 450NK right here. This is the baby brother of the 800NK I reviewed last year, which I thought was one of the best approachable middleweight naked bikes out there. It had 100 horsepower, cost a little over $8,000, and it had a bunch of technology while looking pretty darn slick. But I can sit here and heap praise on that motorcycle all day, but it's not going to change the fact that a 100 horsepower bike is not a good place for a beginner to start. Enter the 450NK right here, the naked version of the 450SS, which I also reviewed a while back in Sturgis, and that bike was a ton of fun. Only problem is you were leaned forward and it was covered in plastic. Not everybody wants that look, so here, the 450NK is definitely going after that upright naked market. However, there are some seriously entrenched motorcycles from some big competitors. You've got the Kawasaki Z400, you've got the R3, the KTM Duke 390, and a whole bunch of other bikes in that segment. Does the 450NK right here have what it takes to take its place at the top of the beginner bike heap? I don't know. Let's hit the road and find out.
Now, pulling away, you may notice that I am wearing a completely different helmet today. This is the Suzuki Strata 3 Primo Carbon Liberty Edition, which has this nice, lovely Evel Knievel style graphic. It's glorious. It's actually really, really nice. And I'm working on a helmet review. I'm not sure if it's already come out or if it's getting ready to come out, but that is why I'm wearing a different helmet and why the audio may sound a little bit different today. Just wanted to give you guys a quick little heads up on what's going on there. But let's get back to the NK. Getting out on the twisty roads as your first motorcycle, what you really want is you want a motorcycle that's easy to ride and that's confidence inspiring. Those are really the two big things that I would look for if I was going to recommend a motorcycle to somebody. Is it's simple and it feels good. It inspires confidence and makes you want to go out and ride. And does this motorcycle do that? Absolutely, man. This thing is such a great little package. Around a corner, it's genuinely surprising how good these little bikes feel. And among the crop, this one feels the best. The power is nice and playful. The throttle is easy to use. It's not snatchy. It doesn't feel like there's soft spots in it. It's very linear and easy to ride with. And one real standout feature, we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about it later on, but one real standout feature on this motorcycle is that front brake. The front brake, honest to God, feels better to me than my brand new KTM 690 Enduro R's front brake. Now, admittedly, this is a J1 4-pot caliper, whereas mine is it a 4-pot caliper? I actually don't know. Hold on. Let me pull over. It feels like a 4-pot. Yep, that's a 4-pot caliper. Yeah, this front brake does such a great job of towing the motorcycle down to a stop. And for a CFMOTO branded no-name master cylinder, it's impressive. It's genuinely impressive how good it feels. And having that kind of braking power at your fingertips is really nice as a beginner because A, you're not going to throw yourself over the handlebars like you would if maybe this was a dual disc setup. But it's going to give you that really nice progressive brake feel, and you're actually going to develop the skills of initially loading, then squeezing the brakes and generating that great brake power. A lot of people get this wrong. Straight line speed and horsepower is not what makes somebody fast. What makes somebody fast is how they brake and how they go around the corners. And if you're learning good habits with this motorcycle early on, you're going to be so much better of a rider later on down the road. This is another thing we'll talk about a little bit later on too, but my goodness, is the suspension on here surprising. The suspension is a genuine treat because usually when you get on these bikes, it doesn't feel that great, but this feels just as good as the fully adjustable setup on the KTM 390. And last but not least, the sound that this little motor puts out is so nice. It's so cool to hear that cross-plane parallel twin going. It makes you sound different than all the other bargain bin beginner bikes that are out there. And I really wish that Japan would get off their heinies and give us this kind of awesome exhaust note in their beginner bikes. But speaking of that motor, let's talk about some of the specs on here.
Now before we get onto those specs, let me take a second to tell you the good word about Quad Lock. They make the best phone mount and case combo for your bike, period. The case is sturdy enough to put up with all the abuse I can throw at it and sleek enough to fit in your pocket without being a giant lump. The mounts are easy to use, install in seconds, and hold your phone with that G.I. Joe Kung Fu grip. I've crashed off-road with my Quad Lock setup, and even though I bent the handlebars, my phone itself came out completely unscathed. But wait, there's more! Quad Lock has a wide range of accessories, from wireless chargers to their mag wallet, and my personal favorite, the USB smart charger, which installs directly on your battery, but turns off with the ignition so it doesn't drain your battery. Check out everything Quad Lock has to offer by clicking that link down in the description below. Specs-wise, we're dealing with a 449cc parallel twin here with the 270-degree crank-ish. Maybe that number's different, but it's definitely not the basic 180-degree parallel twin that you hear in all of the other competitors. This thing is putting down 50 horsepower and 29 foot-pounds of torque with a claimed curb weight of 364 pounds. That is a lot of power in a little package. Speaking of little package though, this thing is a small motorcycle. If I mount up on it, the seat height of 31.3 inches is really nice and approachable, and I've got a pretty severe bend in my knee at 6'2", 6'3" in my boots. This thing is easy for just about anybody to get on and flat foot comfortably, which is a big deal for any beginner who's getting on a motorcycle for the first time. You don't want some big heavy motorcycle that you don't feel like you can lift off the side stand, or one that you don't feel confident planting your feet on the ground with. However, this is a small motorcycle. If I were to put my feet up on the pegs, this wing in the tank is definitely bullying my leg out for space, and I don't really have a lot of movement backwards and forwards. Now, CFMOTO does offer a tall boy seat for this thing, which is going to move you back, and that's gonna help you out a little bit if you're a taller rider, but it's not gonna change the location of those tank wings. Now, we are gonna talk about that on the highway a little bit in just a second, but before we get out there, I think it's really important that we take a second and look at the components that are on this motorcycle, because when you look at this side by side with one of the Japanese competitors, honestly, this thing feels way more premium. When I hopped on the 800NK for the first time, one of the things that surprised me was how nice the components were on the bike. From the bright TFT dash to the J1 brakes, all the way down to things you wouldn't think about, like the mirrors. Those mirrors are some of the nicest I've ever seen on a stock bike, and even at 100 miles an hour, they're easy to see out of. But that's an $8,500 naked bike. What about the little 450? For a $5,400 motorcycle, there have to be some corners cut, right? Not really. The mirrors, as far as I can tell, are the same ones off the 800. The dashboard is the same, although the modes just change the layout, not the power delivery. And all the seams on the plastic made up really well with no creaking or bending. Jake the Garden Snake actually has an entire video going over the quality of the components, and he and I came to the same conclusion. The really only thing that we can see is that the clutch lever lever is kinda wobbly on its perch, but that's big deal, right? Contrast that with the MT-03 from Yamaha, which is only $400 cheaper, and what do you get? Wooden feeling brakes, an underpowered parallel twin, and an LCD display that was out of date when Texas Instruments released their TI-83. The Kawasaki Z500 is $200 more expensive and has right-side up forks versus the CFMOTO's inverted ones. The front brakes are Kawasaki's house setup, which works, but is no match for the J1 4-pot radials on the NK. And if you want a TFT dash, you need to shell out $6,300. The biggest competition in my mind comes from the Duke 390. The 2024 Duke has the same styling as the bigger brothers with the new headlight, and the jury's still out on whether or not that's ugly or not. I've seen it in person and it's not bad, but I digress. The brakes on the Duke are a bi-brief 4-pot caliper which goes toe-to-toe with the J1. The suspension is almost fully adjustable WP Apex, which beats the CFMOTO's preload-only rear shock and non-adjustable forks. And having first-hand experience with the Duke 390, I can say it handles every bit as well as the CFMOTO. The rub? It's $6,300. Just keep all that in mind when we head back out on the highway.
So we're starting out the highway portion of this video. We're actually stopped at a red light. But one of the things I want to talk about is how crazy light the clutch pull is on this motorcycle and how nice the friction zone feels. It's actually kind of hard for me to stall this motorcycle, which makes it really, really approachable, especially if you've never used a clutch before. A lot of guys and gals who are getting on motorcycles for the first time, maybe they're not used to manual transmissions, and so they don't have that dexterity of, clutch in, gear up. They don't have those mechanics built up yet. They don't have that coordination. So having a really easy light clutch is super, super handy. But we were talking about how small this motorcycle is on the side of the road, and I gotta say, on the highway, it's a small bike. It's a very small bike. I end up having to sit way far back, and I actually have my butt kind of off the top of the seat, and it's not particularly comfortable for me. I'm not going to say it's the worst motorcycle I've ever ridden, because it's not. But I wouldn't want to spend all day on this motorcycle. Unless you think that's just a CFMOTO problem, it's not. I actually have these issues with just about any small displacement beginner bike. I don't really fit on any of them great, but shocker, right? I'm a huge dude. These bikes are not designed for a guy my size, so it's really not all that surprising that it doesn't fit me. But beyond that, how is the ride getting on a highway? A lot of people will look at a motorcycle like this and like, oh, that's not enough power for a Texas highway. And I gotta say, this thing is more than enough. You really do not need to be getting on a 650 when you've got options like this out there. As we're pulling through all the construction on 183 and getting up to highway speed, I'm really not having to try to get going. I was at full throttle there, but that's mostly just because, I'm goofy like that. But, we're full throttle, wide open in fourth gear. And it's picking up pace pretty darn good. There isn't a lot of wind protection, obviously, because it's a naked bike. But I gotta say, the vibration through the handlebars and the foot pegs is bizarrely smooth for a parallel twin like this. Most parallel twins that I ride, they usually have some serious vibration going on, but this one, it's really smooth. It feels as smooth as the Tuono V4 did, and V4s are famously smooth power plants. But now that we're slowing down a little bit, I do want to mention one thing that I have been noticing. If you're stuck in traffic and you're using sort of neutral and maintenance throttle, the bike tends to be a little bit lurchy. Let's see if I can get it to do it. So we're just kind of cruising. Not sure if you... Watch this camera, because it's going to wobble a little bit. It's a little bit herky-jerky down low. That's pretty common. I experience that on a lot of motorcycles, even really nice ones. I think just modern fueling is so lean from the factory that they don't handle the slow-down maintenance throttle all that well. But beyond the bike being a little bit small for me, and it not being super great at maintenance throttle, I'm having a hard time coming up with faults on this thing. And that's because the components on here, they're actually really high quality.
Now, real quick before we wrap up, I do want to take a second and point out the fact here at the end that there's probably two types of people that are watching this video. One is the type of person who's looking for actual information about a beginner motorcycle that they are interested in purchasing. The other person out there, they saw CFMOTO in the title and the thumbnail, and they're just here to hate. If you're one of those latter people who is just here to get mad about CFMOTO, there's nothing I can say to you that's gonna change your mind. Now, there are some people out there who are genuinely on the fence. They're looking for things like long-term reliability. They're looking for dealer support. They're looking for how the bike holds its value, and those are valid points. However, I have a bunch of experience on a ton of different CFMOTO motorcycles at this point, and I have beaten the 800NK to death on a racetrack, and it didn't even complain. My point in saying this is if you're reading comments down below that are questioning the reliability of this motorcycle right here, I really wouldn't worry about it. I don't have any qualms telling you to go grab this motorcycle over a big 4-1. And that sort of lets the cat out of the bag, doesn't it? I would recommend this thing over a Z400. I would certainly recommend it over an MT-03. This thing is a seriously nice motorcycle at a very competitive price point. When you add up the performance, how nice the fit and finish is on the parts, and the overall build quality on this motorcycle, it really does stand apart from the other bikes in the crowd. This is such a great time to be getting on a motorcycle for the first time because you have so many great options. And this thing, honestly, I would put it at the top of the heap if you're looking for a sub 50 horsepower naked bike. You really can't beat it. And with that, guys, I'm gonna wrap this video up. A big shout out to the folks over at CFMOTO for lending me this motorcycle. Let me know all your thoughts on the CFMOTO 450NK right here. Have you tried one of these things out? Would you be willing to start on this motorcycle? If you were gonna do it over again, would you like to start on a bike like this? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.